I was 28 years old when my sister handed me a DNA test kit wrapped in cheap birthday paper, and I didn't know that unwrapping it would unwrap my entire existence. The box sat in my hands like a grenade. My sister Rebecca stood there with that smirk she'd perfected over 30 years, the one that said she knew something I didn't, the one that always made my stomach twist. The living room was packed with family. Mom, Dad, my brother James, Rebecca's husband Mark, their kids. Everyone watching. Waiting. Go on, Emma, Rebecca said, her voice dripping with something between amusement and cruelty. Open it. I tore the paper slowly, feeling everyone's eyes on me. When I saw what it was, my hands froze. A DNA ancestry test. One of those kits you send away and they tell you where your people came from, what percentage Irish or Italian or whatever you are. What is this? I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Rebecca laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was the laugh of someone who'd been waiting years to land a punch. Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake of the family. The room went silent. Completely, horribly silent. I looked at my mother. Her face had gone white. My father was staring at his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. James looked confused, like he'd walked into the wrong movie. Rebecca's husband Mark was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Rebecca, my mother said, her voice shaking. That's enough. Is it though? Rebecca shot back. I mean, come on. We've all thought it, haven't we? Emma doesn't look like any of us. She acts different. She's always been different. Maybe it's time we all knew why. My hands were trembling so badly I nearly dropped the box. My heart was hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. Different. I'd heard that word my whole life. Different eyes, darker hair, different temperament. I'd always thought it was just one of those things, the genetic lottery, the random shuffle of DNA that makes siblings look nothing alike sometimes. But the way Rebecca said it, with that edge of triumph in her voice, made me wonder if she knew something I didn't. You don't have to do this, my father said quietly, finally looking up at me. His eyes were red. You don't have to take that test. Why not? Rebecca pressed. If there's nothing to hide, why not? I looked at my mother again. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She wouldn't meet my eyes. And that's when I knew. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. And Rebecca, my cruel, vindictive sister, had just ripped the bandage off a wound I didn't even know existed. I stood up, clutching the box to my chest like armor. I'm going home, I said. Nobody tried to stop me. I drove home in a blur, my vision swimming with tears I refused to let fall until I was alone. My apartment was dark and cold when I got there, and I sat on my couch in the darkness, holding that box, wondering if I was brave enough to find out the truth. If you're enjoying this so far, don't forget to like the video and watch till the end. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 3 days passed before I opened the box again. 3 days of my phone ringing constantly. My mother called 17 times. My father called 8. James called twice, awkward and uncertain, asking if I was okay, if I needed anything. Rebecca didn't call at all. I stared at the kit laid out on my coffee table. A small tube for saliva. Instructions. A prepaid envelope. So simple. So small. How could something so small potentially destroy everything I thought I knew about myself? My hands shook as I opened the tube. I followed the instructions mechanically, like a robot, not letting myself think about what I was doing. Spit in the tube. Seal it. Put it in the envelope. Before I could change my mind, I walked down to the mailbox on the corner and dropped it in. Done. Now all I had to do was wait 6 to 8 weeks for my entire identity to potentially shatter. I went to work the next day because I didn't know what else to do. I was a graphic designer for a small marketing firm, the kind of job where you could mostly keep your head down and avoid talking to people if you wanted to. And I wanted to. I buried myself in projects, in color palettes and font choices and layouts, anything to keep my brain from spiraling. But every night when I went home, the questions were waiting for me. Was I really my father's daughter? Had my mother had an affair? Was I the product of some secret she'd been keeping for 28 years? Did my siblings know? Had they always known? Was that why Rebecca treated me like dirt my entire life? And the worst question of all, if I wasn't really part of this family, then who was I? 2 weeks after I mailed the test, my mother showed up at my apartment. I heard her knock, soft and hesitant, and when I looked through the peephole, she was standing there looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Diminished. Scared. I almost didn't open the door. But she was still my mother. Whatever else was true, she was still the woman who'd raised me, who'd packed my lunches and helped with my homework and held me when I cried over broken hearts and failed tests. I opened the door. "Emma," she said, her voice cracking on my name. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, looking around my apartment like she'd never been there before, even though she had, dozens of times. She sat on my couch carefully, like she thought it might break. I sat in the chair across from her and waited. "Your father and I," she started, then stopped. Started again. "We've been married for 35 years. I need you to know that. I need you to understand that we love each other. We've always loved each other." My stomach clenched. "But..." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and her eyes were drowning in tears. "But in the beginning, things were complicated." I waited. I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. "We got married young," she continued. "Too young, maybe. And about a year into our marriage, we hit a rough patch. A really rough patch. We separated for a few months. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. During that separation," she said, and her voice was barely a whisper now, "I met someone. Just for a little while. It wasn't serious. It wasn't meant to be anything. And then your father and I reconciled, and I thought that was the end of it. Until..." I managed to choke out. "Until I found out I was pregnant with you." The room tilted. Everything tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair to keep from falling. "I didn't know," my mother said quickly, desperately. "I didn't know for sure. The timing was so close, and your father never questioned it, so I just let myself believe. I let us all believe. Rebecca was 2, James was born 3 years after you, and we were a family. We were happy. Does Dad know?" The words came out strangled. She shook her head. "No. I've never told him. I never wanted to risk everything. Our marriage. Our family. You. Then how does Rebecca know?" My mother's face crumpled. "She doesn't. Not for sure. But she's always suspected. Even as a child, she noticed you looked different. And as she got older, she became convinced. She's been making comments for years, little digs, but nothing like what she did at your birthday. I think she hoped that giving you that test would force the truth out somehow." I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thick, too heavy. "Who is he? Who's my biological father?" My mother looked away. "His name was Daniel Cross. He was a colleague. It only lasted a few months during the separation. When your father and I got back together, I ended it. I haven't spoken to him since." "Is he alive?" "I don't know. I never looked for him. I never wanted to know." I stood up abruptly, pacing the room because if I sat still any longer I was going to explode. You let me grow up not knowing. You let me think I was part of this family when I might not be. You let Rebecca torture me for years with her suspicions and you never said anything. I stopped answering my phone entirely. I went to work, came home, existed in a fog of pain and confusion and anger. I'd sent the DNA test before my mother's confession, and now I was waiting for results that would either confirm my worst fears or leave me in a different kind of limbo. James came by one evening with takeout. I didn't want to see him, but he stood outside my door and said through it that he wasn't leaving until I let him in. So I did. We sat on my couch eating Chinese food in silence for a while before he finally spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "You didn't do anything." "For not noticing. For not standing up for you when Rebecca was being cruel. For just not being a better brother." I looked at him. James, 3 years younger than me, with Dad's eyes and Mom's smile. Undeniably part of the family in a way I might never be. "Did you know?" I asked. "Did you suspect?" "No," he said immediately. "Not at all. You're my sister. You've always been my sister. That's all I've ever thought about it." "But Rebecca is bitter and cruel and she's been that way her whole life," James interrupted. "I don't know why. Maybe because she was the oldest and then you came along and she had to share attention. Maybe because Mom and Dad were harder on her. I don't know. But the way she treats you has never been okay, and what she did at your birthday was unforgivable." "She might be right though," I said quietly. "Mom told me. About the affair. About the possibility." James set down his food. "Did she tell Dad?" "No." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "It doesn't matter." "Of course it matters." "No," he said firmly. "It doesn't. You're my sister. You've been my sister for 25 years. Some test isn't going to change that. Some biological fact isn't going to change that. You're Emma. Your family. End of story." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. But I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change, that once that test came back, nothing would ever be the same again. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after I'd sent the test. I was getting ready for work when I heard the mail slot rattle, and when I went to check, there it was. A plain white envelope with the testing company's logo in the corner. I called in sick to work. Then I sat on my couch and stared at that envelope for 3 hours. Finally, when I couldn't stand it anymore, I opened it. The first page was all technical jargon, percentages and genetic markers and ancestry breakdowns. But there was a section at the bottom that made my heart stop. Close DNA matches found. One, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the rest. There was a name. Daniel Cross. A man who shared 50 of my DNA. A man who was, genetically speaking, my father. And I didn't email Daniel Cross. Not yet. I couldn't. First, I needed to figure out what I was going to do with this information. Did I tell my father? Did I confront my mother? Did I wave this test in Rebecca's face and say, "You were right, are you happy now?" I sat on that information for 3 days, feeling it burn a hole in my chest. And then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Emma Richardson? You're listed as a beneficiary. In fact, you're the primary beneficiary. Mr. Cross left explicit instructions about finding you and ensuring you received your inheritance." I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. This man, this stranger who I'd never met, who I hadn't even known existed until 3 days ago, had left me an inheritance? I need time to process this, I managed to say. "Of course. But Ms. Richardson, I do need to arrange a meeting soon. There are other family members involved, and the will stipulates that certain revelations be made in person, to all parties. Would you be available this Friday at 2 p.m.? Other family members? My voice was faint. Yes. Mr. Cross's widow and his 2 sons. They're aware that he had a child from a previous relationship, but they've never met you. The reading of the will requires all beneficiaries to be present. I agreed to the meeting because I didn't know what else to do, and then I hung up and sat in stunned silence. Daniel Cross had been looking for me. He'd known about me. He'd wanted to find me. And now he was dead, and I'd never get the chance to meet him, to ask him questions, to know him at all. But I had 3 days to decide what I was going to tell my family. My mother's family. The people who'd raised me. In the end, I decided to tell my mother. Just my mother. Not Dad, not yet. I called her and asked her to meet me at a coffee shop near my apartment. Neutral territory. She looked terrible when she arrived. Like she hadn't slept in weeks. Like she'd aged 10 years in the 6 weeks since my birthday party. I got the test results, I said without preamble. You were right. Daniel Cross is my biological father. She closed her eyes like I'd slapped her. Emma, he's dead, I continued. He died 3 months ago. But before he died, he registered with DNA databases looking for me. His estate attorney contacted me. I have a meeting on Friday about his will. My mother's face went from pale to sheet white. His will? Apparently I'm a beneficiary. A primary beneficiary, whatever that means. He has a wife and 2 sons, and they're going to be at this meeting too. Oh God, my mother whispered. Emma, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this. Did you love him? I interrupted. Daniel Cross. When you were with him, did you love him? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I thought I did. But I loved your father more. I've always loved your father more. Does he deserve to know? I asked. Does Dad deserve to know that I'm not his? He's your father, my mother said fiercely. Biology doesn't change that. He raised you. He loves you. He's been your father in every way that matters. But he deserves the truth. The truth will destroy him. It will destroy our marriage. It will destroy our family. Rebecca already destroyed our family, I said bitterly. She's been destroying it for years. This just makes it official. My mother reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Please, Emma. Please don't tell him. Not yet. Let me figure out how to do this, how to explain. Just give me time. I pulled my hand away. You've had 28 years. You don't get more time. I'm telling him after the meeting on Friday. I'm going to find out what Daniel Cross left me, and then I'm going to tell Dad the truth. He deserves that much. I left her sitting there crying into her coffee. Friday came too fast and not fast enough. I dressed carefully, professionally, like I was going to a job interview instead of meeting the family of my dead biological father. The attorney's office was downtown, in one of those sleek glass buildings that screamed money and power. Howard Chen was exactly what I expected, 50s, Asian, expensive suit, kind eyes. He shook my hand warmly and led me to a conference room where 3 people were already waiting. A woman in her 60s, elegant and poised, with silver hair and sharp eyes. 2 men, probably in their early 30s, who looked enough alike to obviously be brothers. They all turned to stare at me as I walked in. Mrs. Cross, Howard said gently. Benjamin, Christopher. This is Emma Richardson. The silence was deafening. The widow, Mrs. Cross, looked me up and down with an expression I couldn't read. The brothers just stared. You look like him, Mrs. Cross finally said. Her voice was cool, controlled. You have Daniel's eyes. I didn't know what to say to that, so I said nothing. Howard gestured for me to sit, and I took a chair across from the Cross family. The table between us felt like a continent. "Thank you all for coming," Howard began. "I know this is a difficult situation for everyone involved. Daniel's wishes were very specific about how this was to be handled, and I intend to honor those wishes. Emma, I know this is all very new to you, so please stop me if you have questions." I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Howard opened a folder and began to read. "I, Daniel Robert Cross, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament." The next 10 minutes were a blur of legal language about assets and trusts and disbursements. But the key points burned themselves into my brain. Daniel Cross had been wealthy. Very wealthy. He'd built a successful tech company and sold it 5 years ago for an astronomical sum. He'd left his wife the house and a generous trust. He'd left each of his sons a substantial inheritance and shares in various investments. And he'd left me everything else. The majority of his liquid assets. His personal effects. His journals. And a letter. "This is insane," Christopher, the older brother, said flatly. "He leaves some stranger the bulk of his estate?" "She's not a stranger, Mrs. Cross said quietly. "She's his daughter." "She's a daughter he never met," Benjamin shot back. "A daughter he didn't raise. We're his family. We're the ones who were here." "Daniel was very clear in his wishes," Howard said firmly. "And legally, this will is ironclad. He had it updated 6 months before his death, when he began actively searching for Emma. He knew what he was doing." "Why?" I said, and everyone turned to look at me. It was the first word I'd spoken since sitting down. Why did he leave me anything? He didn't know me. Howard reached into the folder and pulled out an envelope. "He left you this. Perhaps it will explain." My hands shook as I took the envelope. It was thick, expensive paper, with my name written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. My father's handwriting. My biological father's handwriting. "Can I read this in private?" I asked. "Of course," Howard said. "There's a smaller office next door you can use. Take your time." I escaped gratefully from the conference room and the stares of the Cross family. The smaller office was quiet and empty, and I sat down in a chair and opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were several pages, handwritten, dated 3 months before his death. "Dear Emma," it began. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I never got the chance to meet you. That's my biggest regret. Bigger than any business failure, bigger than any mistake I've made in my life. Not knowing you is the thing I regret most. I met your mother 30 years ago. We worked together, and we fell into something that wasn't quite love but felt like it at the time. She was married, separated but still married, and I knew it was complicated. I knew it was wrong. But I was young and stupid and I wanted her anyway. When she went back to her husband, I was angry. Hurt. But I understood. She loved him. She'd always loved him. I was just a distraction, a moment of confusion in her life. I didn't know about you. She never told me. And I don't blame her for that. I really don't. She was protecting her family, protecting you. If I'd known, I like to think I would have been there for you, but the truth is I don't know. I was a different person then. Selfish. Ambitious. Maybe I would have failed you too. I found out about you by accident 5 years ago. I was using one of those DNA ancestry sites, just curious about my heritage, and I saw a match. A daughter. The timeline made sense. The connection to your mother made sense. And suddenly everything in my life shifted. I wanted to reach out immediately. I wanted to find you, to know you, to be part of your life. But my wife, Margaret, begged me not to. She said it would destroy too many lives, upend too many families. She said some secrets were better kept buried. And I listened to her. For 4 years, I listened to her. I watched you from a distance through social media, through whatever information I could find online. I saw you graduate college. I saw you start your career. I saw you grow into this beautiful, talented, kind person, and I was so proud. And so ashamed that I had no right to be proud. A year ago, I found out I was dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave me 6 months. I ended up lasting 9, but those were 9 months of knowing my time was limited, knowing I was running out of chances. I told Margaret I was going to find you. She could accept it or not, but I needed to do this before I died. I needed you to know that you had a father who wanted you, even if it was too late for us to have a real relationship. I registered with every DNA database I could find. I hired private investigators. I was looking for you, Emma. I was trying so hard to find you before it was too late. But cancer doesn't wait. It doesn't care about unfinished business or second chances. I'm writing this letter knowing I probably won't be alive when you finally take a test and match with me. I'm writing this as a just-in-case, a last resort, a message in a bottle. I'm leaving you a substantial inheritance because I want you to have security. I want you to have choices. I want you to have the things I couldn't give you when you were growing up. I know money isn't a substitute for presents, for love, for all the birthdays and graduations and moments I missed. But it's what I have to give. I'm also leaving you my journals. I've kept journals since I was 20 years old. They're honest, sometimes brutally so. They document my life, my mistakes, my successes, my relationships. I want you to have them so you can know me, even though we never met. So you can understand who I was, what I valued, what I regretted. I want you to know that I would have loved you. If I'd had the chance, if I'd been in your life, I would have loved you fiercely and completely. You deserved that. You deserved a father who showed up, who was there, who chose you every day. I'm sorry I wasn't that father. I'm sorry your mother had to keep secrets. I'm sorry for the complexity I've added to your life by dying and leaving you this inheritance and this truth. But I'm not sorry you exist. The world is better because you're in it, Emma. I'm certain of that, even though I never got to know you. Be kind to my other children, if you can. Benjamin and Christopher didn't ask for this any more than you did. They're good men. Confused and probably angry right now, but good men. And be kind to Margaret. She's a good woman who was put in an impossible situation. And be kind to yourself. Whatever you decide to do with this information, with this money, with the truth about your parentage, give yourself grace. There's no right answer here. There's just you, trying your best, and that's enough. I wish I could have known you. I wish I could have been your father in more than just genetics. But since I can't, I hope this letter helps you know me, at least a little. With love and regret, Daniel Cross. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. This man, this stranger, had wanted me. Had been looking for me. Had regretted not knowing me. And I'd never get to tell him that I wished I'd known him too. When I finally composed myself enough to return to the conference room, everyone was still there, waiting. They all looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. He was looking for me, I said, my voice rough from crying. He was trying to find me before he died. Mrs. Cross's composure cracked a little. He was. For the last year of his life, it was all he talked about. Finding you. Making sure you knew that he'd wanted you. I'm sorry, I said, looking at her and then at the brothers. I'm sorry that this happened, that he left me so much. I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know he existed until a few days ago. It's not your fault, Benjamin said quietly. He was the younger brother, softer around the edges than Christopher. Dad made his choices. He wanted you to be taken care of. We have to respect that. Christopher didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. Howard cleared his throat. There are some logistics we need to discuss. The inheritance will be transferred to a trust in your name, Emma. You'll have access to the funds immediately, but I'd recommend meeting with a financial advisor to help you manage it. The amount is substantial, and it's important that you make informed decisions. How substantial? I asked, almost afraid of the answer. After the other disbursements, your inheritance comes to approximately $12 million. The room spun. $12 million. $12 million. I can't, I said faintly. That's too much. That's insane. It's what he wanted, Mrs. Cross said. And honestly, Emma, he could afford it. The money he left you won't impact our lives. We're already well provided for. He made sure of that. He wanted you to have this. Please don't refuse it. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? A man I'd never met had left me millions of dollars out of guilt and love and regret, and his family was telling me to take it. The meeting wound down eventually. Howard gave me stacks of paperwork to sign, contact information for financial advisors, keys to a storage unit where Daniel Cross's journals were kept. The Cross family shook my hand as they left, awkward but not unkind. Mrs. Cross hugged me briefly. He really did want you, she whispered in my ear. Whatever else you believe, believe that. And then I was alone with Howard Chin, drowning in paper and overwhelmed by everything that had just happened. This is a lot to take in, he said gently. Do you have anyone who can help you process this? Family? Friends? I laughed, and it came out slightly hysterical. My family is complicated right now. Most families are, he said with a small smile. But you don't have to figure this all out today. Take your time. Call me when you're ready to move forward with the financial arrangements. And Emma? Congratulations. Daniel would be glad you finally know the truth. I left his office in a daze and drove home on autopilot. When I got to my apartment, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing, just trying to process everything. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. How did it go? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I went upstairs, threw the paperwork on my coffee table, and called my father. My dad. The man who'd raised me, who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with my math homework and walked me down the aisle at my college graduation. Emma. He sounded so happy to hear from me. Sweetheart, how are you? I've been worried about you. Dad, I need to see you, I said. Can you come over? Alone? His voice changed, became concerned. Of course. Is everything okay? No, I said honestly. Everything is not okay. But I need to talk to you. I need to tell you something. He arrived 45 minutes later, and when I opened the door, he looked at me with such love and worry that I almost couldn't go through with it. But I had to. He deserved the truth. We sat on my couch, and I told him everything. About the DNA test. About my mother's confession. About Daniel Cross and the meeting and the inheritance. I showed him the test results, the letter from Daniel, the paperwork from the attorney. He listened without interrupting, his face growing paler with every word. When I finished, he sat in silence for a long time, just staring at the papers in his hands. Did you know? I finally asked. Did you suspect? No, he said quietly. I never suspected. You're my daughter. You've always been my daughter. It never occurred to me to question it. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm so sorry, Dad. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and his eyes were wet. Why are you apologizing? You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is your fault. But Mom, your mother and I will deal with that, he said firmly. That's between us. But you? You're my daughter. That hasn't changed. A test doesn't change that. Some other man's DNA doesn't change that. I'm your father. I'll always be your father. I broke down then, sobbing, and he held me like he'd held me when I was a little girl, and for a moment everything felt like it might be okay. But then he said, I need to talk to your mother. I need to hear this from her. And I knew the storm was just beginning. My parents' marriage imploded over the next 2 weeks. Dad moved into a hotel. Mom called me crying every day, begging me to talk to him, to help fix this. Rebecca called once, her voice cold and smug, saying she'd known all along, saying she'd been right to doubt. I hung up on her. James was the only one who stayed neutral, who just kept showing up at my apartment with food and movies and silent company. He never asked about the money. He never asked what I was going to do. He just was there. But Rebecca wasn't done. She'd tasted blood, and she wanted more. 2 weeks after the attorney meeting, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, a woman's voice said, "Is this Emma Richardson?" "Yes. My name is Judith Marsh. I'm a producer for the podcast Family Secrets. Your story was brought to our attention, and we'd love to feature it on our show. The revelations about your paternity, the inheritance, the family drama. It's exactly the kind of human interest story our listeners love." My blood ran cold. "Who told you about my story?" "We protect our sources," she said smoothly. "But I can tell you that they were very detailed in their information. They seemed to know the family well." Rebecca. It had to be Rebecca. She'd leaked my story to a podcast producer. "I'm not interested," I said flatly. "We'd pay you, of course. And it would be a chance to tell your side of things, to control the narrative before someone else does." I said I'm not interested. "Don't call me again." I hung up and immediately called James. "Did you know Rebecca was talking to journalists about me?" "What?" "No." "What are you talking about?" I told him about the podcast producer. He swore viciously. "I'm calling her right now. This is beyond the pale, even for her." But when he called Rebecca, she was unapologetic. The truth was going to come out anyway, she told him, and he put her on speaker so I could hear. "Emma's sitting on a $12 million inheritance from some random man while our family is falling apart. People deserve to know what kind of person she is." "What kind of person I am?" I shouted into the phone. "Rebecca, I didn't do anything. I didn't ask for any of this. You're the one who started this whole thing with that DNA test. You're the one who wanted to humiliate me." "I wanted the truth," she shot back. "And now we have it. You're not my sister. You're not Dad's daughter. You're the product of Mom's affair, and you've been lying to all of us your whole life." "I didn't know I was lying." "Doesn't matter. You've always been different. Always been wrong. And now we know why." James cut in. "Rebecca, you need to call that podcast producer back and tell them the story is off limits. You need to kill this before it goes any further." "Or what?" "Or I will make sure Mom and Dad know exactly what you did. I'll make sure everyone in the family knows that you leaked Emma's private information to the media." "Is that really the legacy you want?" There was a long silence. Then Rebecca said, "Fine. I'll call them off. But this isn't over. Emma doesn't get to just walk away from this with millions of dollars while the rest of us deal with the fallout of Mom's lie." She hung up. "I hate her," I said quietly. "I've tried so hard my whole life not to hate her, but I do. I really do." James looked at me sadly. "I think she hates herself more than you could ever hate her. I think she's been miserable her whole life, and she takes it out on everyone around her, especially you. That doesn't make it okay. No, he agreed. It doesn't. I spent the next few days in a fog, trying to figure out what to do next. The money sat in an account I was afraid to touch. The journals from Daniel Cross sat in a storage unit I was afraid to visit. My family was in pieces, and I didn't know how to put them back together or even if I should try. And then I got another call from Howard Chin. Emma, I'm sorry to bother you, but something's come up that you need to know about. Can you come to my office? What is it? It's better if we discuss this in person. Can you come today? I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. When I got to his office, he looked grim. I've been contacted by an attorney representing your sister, Rebecca Richardson Marsh. My stomach dropped. What does she want? She's contesting the will. She's claiming that as Daniel Cross's stepdaughter, she has a right to part of the inheritance. I stared at him. Stepdaughter? Daniel Cross wasn't married to my mother. They had an affair. Her argument is that your mother was legally married to your father at the time of your conception, making you and your siblings part of the same family unit. It's a stretch, legally speaking, and I don't think she has much of a case. But she's filing the motion anyway. I felt something inside me snap. Rebecca wasn't content with destroying my relationship with my family. She wanted to take the money too. She wanted to punish me for existing, for being evidence of my mother's mistake, for getting something she thought she deserved. Can she win? I asked. Probably not. But she can drag this out. She can make it expensive and messy in public. That might be her real goal. She's already tried to leak my story to a podcast, I said bitterly. Public is exactly what she wants. Howard nodded. I suspected as much. Emma, I have to ask, how do you want to handle this? You could fight her in court. You'd likely win, but it would be costly and stressful. Or you could consider offering her a settlement, something to make her go away. You mean pay her off? I mean give her enough money that she drops the contest and leaves you alone. I thought about it. Thought about Rebecca, bitter and cruel, spending the rest of her life resenting me. Thought about years of legal battles, of family gatherings ruined by hostility, of never being able to escape this. No, I said finally. No settlement. She wants to fight? We'll fight. I'm not giving her a dime. Howard looked surprised. Are you sure? This could get ugly. It's already ugly, I said. But I'm done letting Rebecca bully me. I'm done trying to make her happy or win her approval. If she wants to contest the will, let her. We'll see her in court. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later. And with it came a media storm. Despite James's intervention, Rebecca had clearly kept talking to journalists. Articles started appearing online, DNA test reveals decades of family lies, surprise inheritance tears family apart, woman discovers she's not related to siblings, inherits millions. My name was in some of them. My face was in others, pulled from my social media profiles. I had to make everything private, had to stop answering calls from unknown numbers. Reporters showed up at my apartment, at my office. I had to take a leave of absence from work. My mother was destroyed. The public revelation of her affair ended up being worse than anything my father could have done. She couldn't go anywhere without whispers and stares. She ended up moving in with her sister in another state, just to escape. My father was handling it better, but barely. He'd filed for divorce, which I couldn't blame him for. But he kept in touch with me, kept insisting that I was his daughter no matter what. James stood by me through all of it. When reporters camped outside my building, he came and stayed on my couch, running interference, threatening to call the cops if they didn't leave. When I broke down crying because I couldn't leave my apartment without cameras in my face, he sat with me and reminded me that this would pass, that storms always eventually break. The court date was set for 3 months away. 3 months of living in this nightmare, of being scrutinized and judged and dissected by strangers. But I did one thing that helped. I finally went to the storage unit and got Daniel Cross's journals. There were dozens of them, leather-bound books spanning 30 years. I started at the beginning and read chronologically, learning about this man who was my father in biology but not in life. He was funny. That surprised me. His entries were often self-deprecating, full of observations about human nature and the absurdity of life. He was ambitious too, sometimes ruthlessly so in his early years. But as he got older, the entries became more reflective, more concerned with meaning and legacy. The entries about my mother were brief but poignant. He'd loved her, or thought he had. But he recognized even then that they weren't meant to be, that she belonged with someone else. There was a period of about 10 years where he barely mentioned her at all. He was building his company, falling in love with Margaret, raising Benjamin and Christopher. He was living his life, not knowing I existed. And then, 5 years ago, an entry that made me cry, I found out I have a daughter today. A daughter I never knew about. Her name is Emma. She's 23 years old. She's beautiful and accomplished and I had nothing to do with it. I contributed half her DNA and then disappeared, unknowing. How many times did she need a father and I wasn't there? How many soccer games and school plays and graduations did I miss? How do I grieve for moments I didn't even know I was losing? The entries after that were full of me. Screenshots of my social media posts. Speculation about my life. Plans for how to contact me, then second-guessing, then more plans. He wanted so badly to know me, and he was so afraid of disrupting my life. The last entry was dated a week before he died. I'm running out of time. I can feel it. The pain is constant now, and the medication barely helps. I've registered with every DNA database I can find. I've left everything in place for Emma to be found after I'm gone. But I wish I could see her face just once. I wish I could tell her that I wanted her. That I would have been there if I'd known. That I'm sorry for all the ways I failed her without ever meeting her. Maybe some debts can't be repaid. Maybe some mistakes can't be fixed. But I can make sure she knows that she was wanted. That she mattered. That somewhere in the world, there was a father who loved her even though he never got to show it. That will have to be enough. I closed the journal and cried for the relationship we never got to have. For the father I never knew I needed until it was too late. For all the missed moments and lost time. But I also felt something else. Anger. Anger at Rebecca for trying to take this away from me, for trying to turn this gift into something ugly and wrong. Anger at the situation, at the lies that had created this mess. And a determination to fight. The court case was a circus. Rebecca's lawyers argued that the inheritance was morally wrong, that I had no real relationship with Daniel Cross, that his other children deserved the money more. They tried to paint me as a gold digger, someone who'd taken advantage of a dying man's guilt. My lawyers countered with the journals, with the letter, with testimony from Margaret Cross herself. She took the stand and said in clear, firm tones that Daniel had wanted me to have the money, that he'd been of sound mind when he updated his will, that his decision should be respected. Benjamin and Christopher Cross testified too. They said they were financially secure, that their father's provision for them was generous, that they supported his wishes regarding my inheritance. Rebecca's case fell apart. The judge was visibly annoyed by the whole proceeding, calling it a waste of the court's time. He ruled in my favor, dismissed Rebecca's contest with prejudice, and ordered her to pay court costs. It was over. I'd won. But I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. Tired and sad and done with all of it. Rebecca left the courthouse without looking at me. Her husband Mark stopped me on the steps outside. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't know she was going to do this." She told me she was protecting family assets, but I didn't realize how far she'd take it. Are you still with her? I asked. He looked away. I don't know. This has shown me sides of her I don't like very much. We're in counseling, but... He shrugged helplessly. I hope you figure it out, I said, and I meant it. Mark had always been kind to me, even when Rebecca wasn't. James was waiting for me at the bottom of the steps. You did it, he said, grinning. You beat her. We beat her, I corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. He hugged me tight. That's what family is for. And that's when I realized, family wasn't just biology. It wasn't just the people you shared DNA with. It was the people who showed up for you, who stood by you when things got hard, who loved you not because they had to but because they chose to. James was my family. My dad, the man who raised me, was my family. Even Margaret Cross and her sons had become something like family through this bizarre shared experience. But Rebecca? Rebecca had chosen not to be family. And I was okay with that. 3 months after the court case, I did something I'd been thinking about for a while. I set up a foundation in Daniel Cross's name. A foundation that would help children from complicated families, kids who felt like outsiders, who didn't quite fit. I funded scholarships and therapy programs and support groups. I couldn't change my own past, but I could maybe make the future easier for someone else. I also reconciled with my mother. It took time and a lot of therapy and some hard conversations. She and my father were divorced now, but they were civil. She'd apologized 1,000 times, and I'd finally accepted that she'd done what she thought was best at the time. Was it the right choice? I didn't know. Maybe there was no right choice in a situation like that. Maybe there were just choices, and consequences, and people trying their best in impossible circumstances. My father and I remained close. He made it clear, over and over, that I was his daughter and nothing would change that. He walked me down the aisle when I got married 2 years later. He was there when I had my first child, holding his granddaughter with tears streaming down his face. I never heard from Rebecca again. According to James, she and Mark eventually divorced. She moved across the country, cut ties with most of the family. I heard she remarried, had a kid of her own. I hoped motherhood softened her, made her kinder. But I didn't reach out to find out. Some relationships are too broken to fix. And that's okay. I used part of the inheritance to buy a house. I invested the rest, lived comfortably but not extravagantly. I kept working, kept designing, kept building a life that was mine. And I read Daniel Cross's journals over and over, learning about this man who was my father in biology, understanding his regrets and his dreams, carrying his memory with me even though we never met. One day, about 5 years after all of this started, I was going through some of his journals and found a loose page stuck between 2 entries. It was a list, titled Things I Want to Tell Emma Someday. I read through the list with tears in my eyes. You are not a mistake. You were wanted. You deserved better than the hand you were dealt. Your existence made the world better. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I hope you're happy. I hope you're loved. I hope you know that somewhere, someone was thinking of you, hoping for you, loving you from a distance. You are enough. You have always been enough. I framed that list and hung it in my office. On bad days, when the old insecurities crept in, when I felt like the outsider again, I'd look at it and remember. I was wanted. I was enough. And I had always been enough. Rebecca had tried to destroy me with that DNA test, with that cruel joke at my birthday party. She'd thought the truth would break me, would prove that I didn't belong. But she was wrong. The truth didn't break me. It freed me. It gave me a father who wanted me, even if he was gone. It gave me financial security and options. It showed me who my real family was, the people who stood by me when things got hard. And it taught me something I'd needed to learn my whole life, that belonging isn't about biology or blood. It's about choice. It's about the people who choose to love you, to support you, to show up for you day after day. I belonged because I chose to belong. Because I made my own family from the people who loved me back. Rebecca never understood that. She was so focused on blood and biology and who was really family that she destroyed her own relationships. She pushed away the people who loved her because they didn't meet some arbitrary standard of belonging. And in the end, she ended up alone. I ended up surrounded by love. By James and his family. By my father. By the friends who stood by me through the media storm. By Margaret Cross, who became an unlikely friend and mentor. By my husband and eventually our children. I built a life that Daniel Cross would have been proud of. A life full of love and purpose and meaning. And sometimes, on quiet nights, I'd pour a glass of wine and read his journals and talk to him like he could hear me. I'd tell him about my day, about his grandchildren, about the foundation and the people it helped. I'd thank him for the gift he gave me, not just the money but the knowledge that I was wanted, that I mattered. And I'd like to think that somehow, somewhere, he knew. That he was proud. That he was glad I finally knew the truth. Because the truth, as painful as it was at first, set me free. It showed me who I really was, not just biologically but fundamentally. I was Emma. I was a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a designer, a philanthropist. I was complicated and flawed and human. And I was enough. I had always been enough. Rebecca's cruel joke had backfired in the most spectacular way. She'd wanted to prove I didn't belong, and instead she'd proved that I belonged in ways she never could. I belonged with the people who loved me. I belonged to a legacy of a father who'd wanted me from afar. I belonged to myself, comfortable in my own skin, confident in my own worth. Years later, when my daughter asked me about family and belonging, I told her the whole story. I didn't hide any of it, not my mother's affair, not Daniel Cross, not Rebecca's cruelty, not the court case. I told her all of it because I wanted her to understand that family is complicated, that life is messy, that people make mistakes. But I also told her that love is a choice. That family is built through showing up, through supporting each other, through choosing connection over blood. She listened to the whole thing with wide eyes, and when I was done, she said, "So Aunt Rebecca was wrong?" "Yes," I said. "She was very wrong. About a lot of things." "Do you miss her?" I thought about it. Did I? Did I miss the sister who'd tormented me, who'd tried to destroy me, who'd never once chosen me? I miss the sister I wished I'd had, I said finally. But I don't miss the sister she actually was. Does that make sense? My daughter nodded. She was wise for her age, understanding things that took me decades to learn. "I'm glad you have Uncle James," she said. "And Grandpa. And Grandma Margaret." "Me too, baby. Me too." Life moved on. The foundation grew. I published a book about my experience, not for attention but because people reached out asking how I'd survived, how I'd healed, how I'd built a life after everything fell apart. The book helped people. I got letters from readers telling me that my story gave them hope, gave them courage to face their own complicated family situations. I never heard from Rebecca. Not once. Not even when the book came out, and she must have known about it. She'd chosen her path, and I'd chosen mine, and they never intersected again. And I was okay with that. More than okay. I was grateful. Because that DNA test, that cruel birthday joke, had been the catalyst for the most important journey of my life. The journey to understanding who I really was, what really mattered, who really loved me. Rebecca thought she was exposing a weakness, revealing a flaw in my existence. Instead, she revealed the strength I didn't know I had. The resilience. The capacity to rebuild. She thought she was proving I didn't belong. Instead, she gave me the chance to find where I really belonged, with the people who chose me, loved me, stood by me. In a way, I should thank her. That DNA test changed my life, but not in the way she intended. It made me stronger. It gave me clarity. It connected me to a father I never knew but who wanted me desperately. It showed me who my real family was. But I'll never thank her. Because her cruelty, her vindictiveness, her desire to hurt me was never okay. The fact that good things came from it doesn't excuse what she did. Instead, I'll just live well. I'll raise my children with love and acceptance. I'll run the foundation that helps other confused, hurt kids find their way. I'll remember Daniel Cross and honor his memory. I'll love my chosen family fiercely. And I'll know, deep in my bones, that I am enough. That I have always been enough. That Rebecca's cruelty couldn't change that fundamental truth. I was wanted. I was loved. I belonged. And no DNA test, no cruel sister, no family secret could ever take that away from me. That's my revenge. Living well. Being happy. Knowing my worth. Rebecca tried to destroy me with the truth. Instead, the truth set me free. And I've never looked back. The best part? My children will never doubt their belonging. They'll grow up knowing that family is about love and choice and showing up. They'll grow up secure and loved and certain of their place in the world. That's the legacy I'm building. Not just with Daniel Cross's money, but with the lessons learned from the whole painful experience. That's how I won. Not in a courtroom. Not with inheritance. I won by becoming the person Daniel Cross hoped I'd be. By living a life of purpose and love and connection. By refusing to let Rebecca's cruelty define me. By choosing, every single day, to be enough. And that's the end of the story. Not the dramatic confrontation some people wanted, not the revenge plot others expected. Just me, living my life, surrounded by love, secure in my identity, comfortable in my own skin. Just me, finally, completely, entirely whole. That's the revenge Rebecca never saw coming. That her attempt to destroy me actually saved me. And I'll carry that truth with me for the rest of my life. I am Emma. I am a daughter to two fathers, one who raised me and one who wanted me from afar. I am a sister to James, chosen family to Margaret and her sons. I am a wife, a mother, a designer, a philanthropist. I am complicated and messy and human and flawed. And I am enough. I have always been enough. I will always be enough. Rebecca's faces went pale at that urgent meeting because she'd set something in motion she couldn't control. She'd tried to expose a weakness and instead exposed her own cruelty for everyone to see. And while she ended up alone and bitter, I ended up surrounded by love. That's the real twist ending. Not revenge. Not payback. Just the understanding that love, real love, transcends biology. That family is built through choice and commitment and showing up. That's what I learned. That's what I carry with me. That's what I'll pass on to my children and their children. And that's why, in the end, I won. Not because of the money or the inheritance or the court case. But because I learned who I really was. And I learned that who I really was had always been enough.